Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Portlandian. And for the first time I'm going to be saying hi to our fellow Jungle Gamer TV viewers who have never seen my face. So, this is the guy behind the top 10 videos. I'm sorry for any disappointment. The reason I've been spending so much time on this is because it's going to be the top 10 game consoles of all time up till the current generation of game consoles. So, there's a lot to go over. There's a lot of research, there's a lot of game playing, there's a lot of nostalgia, trying to work out my personal feelings towards something, towards what's actually true, or what even deserves to be on the list in the first place, and why. And how to even order these things. Like, making a top 10 of the greatest game consoles is very hard. Like, where does the Sega Genesis fit into that? Where does the Super Nintendo? Oh, how does this all work together? Why is one better than the other? It took me forever to get that concept down. But I'm glad that I was able to. Unfortunately, it's going to take a lot of time. And because of that, I'm only going to be able to release one of these numbers in these top 10s per week. So in this episode, you are getting number 10. You're going to get the number 10 game console of all time, at least in my opinion. And every week after that, you're going to get further down the list. Now, between number 2 and number 1, there will be an honorable mentions video, where I'll go over some game consoles that didn't make the list but deserve to be mentioned nonetheless due to their contribution to the gaming industry. The reason I have to split this up is because if I took everything I wrote down in scripts and combined it into one video, the video would be about an hour and 20 minutes long. It's a lot more production than I can handle in 1 week. You know, I'm a single dad with a full-time job. I don't have the time to be able to do that kind of editing, or filming, or anything. So, in order to be able to keep up with my weekly video, and be able to give you guys some great content at the same time, this is how it has to be. But I think it'll be for the best. I think this is going to be a great way to go about it because I'm able to give you guys a lot more quality. I'm able to delve into that console, tell you exactly why it should be on this list, give you some history, give you some, things I really like about it, talk about the controller and how well that played out. Everything about this console I'll be able to go ahead and go over for you. And I'll be able to do it in detail in a about 10-minute video apiece. So, thanks for tuning in. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you guys are going to enjoy the next 10 weeks as much as I am. Well, I think you heard enough background information, so let's go ahead and get this started with number 10, one of my favorite game consoles of all time, the Sega Saturn.
The Sega Saturn was released on May 11th, 1995 at the very first E3, and Sega must have been psyched to be there to go ahead and release a console 4 months before the planned Saturn Day release of September 2nd, 1995. Because of this, the console only had 6 games at launch. Not having games at launch was a big deal, but it was even more so a big deal when you had a big price for your console. The Sega Saturn launched at a price of $399.99, and the very next day at that E3, Sony showed up on stage and showed off the PlayStation for $299.99. A big stab to Sega, which led Sony to their era of dominance for the next 2 console generations. But even more so than the PlayStation beating Sega on a matter of price, Sega did a huge disservice to its developers and to its retailers with the launch on May 11th. Developers who were planning to have their game released in September hadn't completed their games yet, and they were expecting bundle-in sales. Because of that, there was a lack of trust with Sega, and many of these developers never developed a game for a Sega console again. Also, only a certain number of retailers got the Sega Saturn upon launch, meaning that many were cut out of the possible sales and didn't get the console for months. And because of that, some of them didn't even want it anymore. They wanted out of the Sega business, and they never trusted them again. Thanks to this horrible marketing strategy from Sega, which is very hard to believe given that these are the guys who came up with Genesis does what Nintendo and blast processing, the Sega Saturn sold well below expectations, selling only about 2 million consoles in the United States and 6 million in Japan. This is a console that strained relationships with retailers, developers, gamers, everybody really. Why do I have it at number 10? Well, because it did some things just so incredibly well and set a precedence for the entirety of the industry that it just has to be recognized. The biggest selling titles on the Sega Saturn were actually arcade conversions, and the Sega Saturn showed off the power of a home console extremely well, in a way that the PlayStation and N64 just couldn't. The arcade ports of Space Harrier, Outrun, Afterburner, Virtua Fighter, Street Fighter Alpha 2, and just a ton of other games just showed off the amazing power that the Sega Saturn had as a 2D console. As a 3D console, it failed, but it still tried to innovate. Sega didn't use triangular polygons like almost every other system in the industry. They went for four-sided polygons, and this made it extremely difficult to program ports or really anything for the game console itself, on top of the fact that it had multiple processors in the first place, which again is innovative. But it made it hard for anybody to really make a standout game because they were just trying to figure out how to utilize the hardware so often. But even more so than any of the capabilities of the console, the big thing, the most important thing for me as a gamer is how do I play with it? And luckily the Sega Saturn controller is easily the best gamepad ever released in the history of ever. I mean, just look at the Model 2 controller, or just a standard Japanese controller for everybody else. Very slim, easy to hold, extremely comfortable, great shoulder buttons, a superb D-pad that is straight ripped off of the Sega Genesis, and a fantastic, extremely comfortable 6-button layout, making it perfect for all the Capcom fighting games, and there were a ton of them that were released on the Sega Saturn. I really don't understand why more consoles after the Sega Saturn didn't have a 6-button layout. It would have been perfect. The only thing that even comes close is Capcom's own controller for the Xbox, but even that is thick and bulky, and not even near the slimline capabilities of the Saturn controller. This controller is absolutely superb. I can't praise it highly enough. It really is the best controller to ever be released. I can't back it up even more. You just have to hold one in your hands to understand. I can say, look at this. I can say, look at these buttons. Look at this gamepad. Look at these shoulder buttons. But none of that will really make any sense to you guys unless you actually hold it and play a game in your hands. So here's my challenge to all of you viewers who are doubting that the Sega Saturn even deserves to be here. Find a copy of Street Fighter Alpha 2. Or import a copy. Or import a couple of Darkstalkers games and play them with the gamepad, and you will see exactly what I mean. This gamepad is easily the best controller to ever be crafted, and it really does cement the Sega Saturn's place on my list, because when I was playing games on the Saturn, the controls were perfect. The control was there, and it didn't feel overwhelming, and I didn't have to buy anything else to get it to work. No, just with the standard controller that came with the Saturn, it worked perfectly, and I just adore that. Nobody else is making controllers that just work perfectly out of the box with as much capability as the Sega Saturn controller, and I just have to praise Sega here. It's amazing. Thanks to its incredible ability to bring the arcade home, amazing 2D games, as well as great 3D rendering for those who were able to figure out how to program for it, the Sega Saturn was a more than capable game console, but that controller, that amazing controller, really does cement it at number 10 on my top 10 game consoles of all time before the current generation. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and to buy or sell any of the games or consoles discussed in this episode, go ahead and visit GameGavel.com, the only auction site built by gamers for gamers without the high eBay fees.